All right. So, welcome to Prime Wellness Coaching. I am your host, Nolan. You can find me at primewellnesscoaching.com. I'm super excited for our guest today. Today, I have Natalie. Natalie is a amazing school counselor. She's been doing it for a very long time. I know she's excited to kind of tell her story, and I'm excited to hear it. I've been really anticipating this interview. So, Natalie, if you, well, first, let me just kind of go through what we do on the podcast. So, primarily, my focus as a certified professional coach is to reach out to people like yourself, frontline workers. So that means folks who are in the field who can experience high level of stress. So that could be police officers, that could be firefighters, it could be nurses, it could be doctors, or it could be school counselors who are on the front lines doing really hard work and experiencing, possibly experiencing high levels of stress. And so that this is a kind of like a podcast to kind of explore that and explore what your energy levels are like and how you kind of deal with the day-to-day in your profession. So without further ado, if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I am Natalie Parker Bay, school counselor, and I'm super excited to be on your show.
Thank you. All right. So, Natalie, why did you decide to become a school counselor?
I would say I feel like it was kind of innate. I come from a background of family members that are just helpers by nature. From my grandparents down through my parents and everybody. All of us kind of work in a helping field. And even though my mom was a stay-at-home mom, she cared for everybody. You could never go hungry around her. You could never be without money, food, whatever she had was yours to share. So I came from a background of helpers, and it means something to me to help others.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, based off of your experience and how you grew up, that it kind of shaped the way that you chose to kind of go pursue your profession. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. So we're gonna lighten it up a little bit. What is your favorite school counselor related movie or show?
So presently, there's this show called Abbott Elementary, and I really relate to that show.
I love Abbott Elementary. I've seen every single episode. It's hilarious, but my favorite is the school principal. She's the best. Yes. So tell me, how does that, or why is that your favorite?
So it's just so relative. Some of the stuff is like real life. These things happen. You mentioned the principal. I had a principal like that in the past. It was just like all about her. And, she didn't care, or I don't want to say care because they care. It's a caring environment, but the way that she showed her stuff to the students and the faculty, it was just like that. It was like that. She is also my favorite character. There's a movie from the past. It was called Bad Teacher.
Okay.
It was also very funny. I think it was like 2005. Cameron Diaz.
Okay. So I'm happy that you chose movies that have humor, right? Because often when we think about school counselor movies, the first thing that comes to mind for me, I don't remember the name of the movie, but I think it was Samuel L. Jackson, and he's screaming at people, and they're all kids who have all these hardcore issues, and the only way to fix them is by yelling at them and screaming at them, and it's oh my God, this is crazy. So I thought that you would mention that, but I guess finding kind of the humorous TV shows and movies are a lot better.
Yeah. It's right. A day in the life is a movie.
Right.
So many things. I can't wait to get into it.
Right.
Something can happen in one day.
Okay. So what skills and personality traits do you think are important for school counselors to possess?
So the main thing that you have to have is patience. You have to have patience with the parents, with the teachers, definitely with the students. You run into all kinds of issues and problems, and it's just your responsibility to be accountable and deal with those issues. So Patience is number one. You have to have some sense of humor because you can't make the stuff up that happens. I can tell you many stories about you. You will be amazed at the stuff that you run into. It's unbelievable. So patience and a sense of humor, necessary traits.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So with that being said, tell me about your longest day as a school counselor. And when I say longest day for an audience, I'm not talking about in time. You know, sometimes we can have a long 5 minutes, be the longest 5 minutes of our life, right? It'll feel like forever. But so what I'm really asking Natalie is to explain kind of like a day where it felt like it was never ending, even if it was in a short moment because of how traumatic it was.
So I had to think about this question and I want to talk about two separate issues. Okay. First, I want to clear up. I've been working in the childcare industry, working with children for over 15 years. However, I just honed into my school counseling profession. So my longest day, with that being said, my longest day was as an ACS worker. For those who don't know, the Administration for Children's Services. I was a child specialist, and I had to remove a baby from the hospital. She was born with drugs in her system, and it was my job with an assistant to go in and take her away from her parents. And they had to go through court proceedings and everything in order to get her back. So she was a week old, and a week old, when it was time to leave the hospital, she did not get to go home with her mother or father. They were both drug users. So that was the longest day of my life. And some people have asked me, well, why did you leave ACS? You know, I thought that was the kind of job that you wanted to do. It was in my profession, but no. I lost sleep. I came home feeling bad. I worked from 7:30 to question mark. I didn't get time to spend with my family in that position. So, with that being said, working as a school counselor, my days are not that long. I think that every other position that I've worked in prepared me for these roles. I'm stressed on a daily basis. I deal with all kinds of issues with parents, emergencies, crisis, what you name it. The children are my main responsibility. I'm a child advocate. I'm like a child whisperer, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I can't really speak of a long day when it comes to school counseling, because when it's time to go home, 2:45 to 3 o'clock, I leave everything there. Okay. There is this issue going on in the media, and it's something that I like to bring to the attention, especially of middle school age parents. These kids are trying to go viral. They're doing all sorts of TikTok videos, just to name that one because it's very popular, but there's all kind of websites and social media sites that these kids are accessing at home and sometimes in school. In my particular schools, it's not allowed, but they sneak. Kids are very savvy, they're tech savvy, they find ways to sneak their phones, and there's this issue where I don't want to put it out there because I don't know who's gonna see this, but it's something called Fight Club, and they arrange to have a fight in a bathroom. Let's say 2 girls, for example. This is what I experienced, and then they post it on social media and see if it can go viral. And this was a terrible experience for me because these are 2 students that I know well, and they don't even not like each other, but they beat each other like they hated each other.
Right.
That was really hard to see young people, brothers and sisters, fighting like this and having so much hate in their heart for no reason. So I experienced a lot of that in this time. that's something that I'm not accustomed to in the field. But children, young children, middle school age, teenagers, what have you, they have anger issues, and I'm trying to see, that's like a major thing right now in school counseling.
That's so interesting in a lot of different ways. And I just, as you kind of spoke, I thought about it, right? And I thought about different career fields that we talk about when it comes to like frontline workers and first responders. And for the most part, the only thing that really changes is technology for those professions, right? So like in the police field, in my profession, technology changes, but the crimes don't change. You know, for the most part, they're the same. Sometimes they include a little bit more technology. For firefighters, the fires don't really change. But for the most part, you know, you have more advanced technology and things like that. For, you know, all professions, I think that there's a very slow progression, but for your profession, I think it's unique because, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think children change over time. They change through generations. The stuff that happens changes, right? And you're bringing up a great point where technology is what is starting to change the behavior of children, right? Because when we were in school, there wasn't a incentive to show off fights because we didn't have any way to show it, you know, beyond in the school. So after Friday, when on weekends, we really weren't even thinking about school that much. Where, you know, I know now, you know, on Saturday and Sunday, kids are looking at what's going on at school, or what happened over the week at school. So they never really get disconnected. And then on the other part of that I think is really interesting that you mentioned is I guess almost the outward display of showing off the fight. So it's not just like the fight doesn't really matter. Like you said, they don't really dislike each other. And no, in school, if we got into a fight, we really didn't like that person. And in this instance, they're just kind of setting up a club where they're kind of showing off something. And I think that's really unfortunate and really interesting. And I'll further that too. And we don't have to get too deep into this because I know it's getting really deep in the weeds, but even, you know, the fact that at least, again, when I was in high school, I don't remember any school shootings. I remember fights. I remember some weapons, but for the most part, I don't remember it being like this. And talking to children now, one of the things that I see on like Facebook and Instagram from parents is one of the biggest issues they have is mental health and the mental health drain. And I'm sure most of that is driven by social media. But you know, the amount of work that I'm sure that you have to put into the children's mental health, I can't imagine. So am I pretty accurate on that, or is there any correction?
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, from the point that you made about that wasn't a thing when I was in school. I don't want to date myself because I'm only a year older than you as your auntie. But
absolutely. Yes.
But when I was in high school, we didn't have social media. If we had phones, okay, then I'm dating myself again. But you know, flip phones.
Right.
I'm gonna keep it real. I'm a product of the 90s. As a matter of fact, the year I graduated from my high school, which I'm not gonna name because some people are gonna try to fact check and all that.
Okay.
It's cool. Like, I'm not ashamed. I'm very proud of who I am and the time frame that I came up in. So, but I joke around a lot about that. And it's something I want to touch on too. But the year that I graduated, we got metal detectors in the school for the first time. And the reason why, there was a shooting that took place outside of the school.
Okay.
And as a result, the next year, my cousin, he went to the same school. When he went through that school, they had metal detectors now. That wasn't a thing when I was in that school. So
Right.
it was the beginning of that cycle. But as far as the school shootings and stuff, that part it's just rampant right now. And it's happening all over. It's not isolated here or there. We would hear about that in certain communities at a point, but now it's happening all over. And
Absolutely.
It's terrible. Now, concerning the mental health, like, I don't want to blame COVID for everything, but COVID took a toll on schools.
Yeah.
Teachers are stressed out. Counselors are stressed out. Students are stressed out. They're behind because while a lot of them did well remotely, younger students suffered and they didn't get a chance to mature socially. So we left and you were in third grade. You come back to school in person and you're in fifth grade, but you still have the socialization skills of a third grader. Things have changed. The things that you're allowed to do change from third grade to fifth grade. They didn't have that day-to-day interaction that they're accustomed to. So you're coming back to school kind of with the third or fourth grade mentality, but you're in the fifth grade and you're expected to be a little bit more mature. They're not. The children are not as mature. There was a major setback as a result of COVID.
That's interesting that you say that. I've talked to teachers who have said the exact same thing, that COVID really, I mean, you phrased it really well. It just skipped 2 years. And I don't think that we've taken the time to really acknowledge that, because we were really focused on the virus as we should have been. But I think we kind of missed over the fact that there was a huge toll that it took. And there really wasn't a right answer, right? Like you send them to school and they all get sick, or you don't put them in school. Like that's a hard choice that I'm happy I didn't have to make. But you're absolutely right. We haven't addressed that. And, there's going to be a generation of kids who hopefully, if we don't have another pandemic, don't have to worry about that. But this generation of children do. And I don't know how we fix that. I don't know what we do. I don't know if the curriculum, I highly doubt that after 2 years, the curriculum changed to become a little bit, I don't know. And nothing really changed. It just kind of went back to, school's back. So let's just kind of pick up where we left off. That's rough. That's really rough.
So now the thing that has changed is like, my job is becoming more valuable, and they're looking at the mental health, the behaviors of these children. So now it's in demand, where there was a time where it wasn't easy to become a school counselor. And I've worked in all the sectors. I'm now in private school, but I work for the DOE, which is very popular. That has changed over time, but it wasn't easy to break into that sector. Now you can get a job, but it's the question, we have to weigh our options. Is it worth it at this point? The stress level, the things that they put on you, I don't know if it's worth it.
That's so interesting that you said that. The is it worth it piece, because later on in our conversation, I'm probably gonna ask you a question about that. I'm gonna ask you more along the lines, and sorry, surprise audience, but I'm gonna ask her, if somebody was aspiring to become a school nurse, like what should they do? And what I find in your profession, my profession, I've had air traffic controllers on the show, I've had nurses on the show. What I find in all their professions is one thing, is that it's worth it to them, right? So for you, it's worth it to you based off of your childhood up to your adulthood, where you said, what shapes you to actually care about people and care about children. So it's worth it to you because at the end of the day, it's service, right? So it's service because that's what you want to do. Is it worth it financially? No, you're highly underpaid for what you do. Most people in service professions the teachers you work with, highly underpaid for what they do. But they do it because they want to do it because of this, it's in them, right? And I think that's sometimes overlooked. And I think, and I've heard people say this before, they get out of school and they're like, oh man, or they get into a position like yours, or they get into a position like mine as a police officer, and they say, oh, I could have made a lot more money if I did this. It's like, well, that means you don't really want to be here, because you could have. Absolutely, that's a true fact. It's a true statement. But you chose to do this, and you're here, and I'm grateful. We're all grateful for it. So I don't know. I think that's really interesting that you said that, because you're right. Like, it's worth it for you, and I'm hoping that people will listen to this interview and look at people like yourself and say, you know what, it's worth it to me too. I'm not, my values aren't all aligned with money. Of course, you have to have money. I mean, especially you live in New York, you got to have money. But it's not all valued around money. Like, at some point, we have to value each other, and it's very few people who can do the things like what you do. So,
at the end of the day, I just have to say it's not about the money, not one bit, because I do this because I care.
That's
and
right.
That's the bottom line.
Right. What is the biggest misconception about being a school counselor?
There are two. The first thing, now, and this is on just like a general basis. Well, at the end of the day, counselors are teachers. In order to interact and be with these students and be effective to them, you have to be able to teach and manage a class. Counselors are teachers. The biggest misconception is that we have this office with all these signs around. Yeah, some of us may. I do.
Okay.
But we don't teach classes. I teach classes on behavior. I teach drug prevention. I teach social emotional learning. I have classes, 25, 30 students, just like teachers do. I'm able to manage a classroom. Not all counselors do. Some just have individual students and small groups. I teach. That's number one. And on a personal level, the biggest misconception is that, like, I don't know about children. I don't have any experience. They look at me and they think the parents, some of them are thinking that I'm their peer. I'm like, my children are grown. My daughter been here, done that, and I have 2 bonus children that I help raise. And they're grown. They're out of the house. They're doing what they're supposed to do. Well, she actually came home for COVID. That makes me happy.
Yes.
You know, they're in college. They're living their lives. So these parents and some students are quite surprised to look at me and know that I have grown children. They're thinking that I'm running around and I don't know nothing about kids. I'm like, no, I've been doing this. So those are the 2 biggest misconceptions.
So the second one I knew, because I know you. The first one, that's a blind spot for me too, and I'm glad I asked the question because I kind of learned from that question myself, right? Because in my eyes, the school counselor has their office, and I get the signs and stuff like that, but they have their office, and when a child has an issue, they're after the fact. And what you're saying is you're actually in preventive mode. Like, you actually teach classes to help, actually mitigate a situation prior to it even occurring, or at least talk about it. And you're constantly, I guess, by saying you're teaching, you're constantly working on development of children and behaviors, which I think is really amazing. Because again, when we watch movies, it's like, we're sending you to the school counselor, and then they sit in front of the school counselor and they talk about all the traumatic things that are going on at home. And you're like, yeah, but is there in between? I know Natalie isn't just sitting there just waiting for a kid to pop in her office. Like, there's got to be more. And there is, right? Because you have a ton of education that prepared you for this. And I think that's something that parents should understand too, is that this isn't somebody who's underqualified, who's just kind of got a job and sitting in an office. This is somebody who's got a ton of education and is well prepared to do this. So that's interesting. Okay, so this is a kind of getting right into a segue here. So how do you deal with the trauma and you see it here, and what's your outlet?
Okay, so how do I deal with trauma? Like, another thing that I didn't mention early on, like, I was exposed to a lot of trauma growing up. I've been around, I've seen a lot of things, and I'm grateful that I had a support system. I had people to be there for me. I had a counselor, and I'll never forget her. If I could just name drop, I don't know if I'll ever see her again in life, but Brenda Anthony was my high school guidance counselor, and she was the greatest. She was the best. Like, for me personally, her being there, and the fact that she had the name of one of my sisters, like, there was a connection. My sister also went to the sister in question also went to that school. May she rest in peace. But trauma is something that I am able to relate to. So I can listen non-judgmentally to what the students have to say. And again, I'm an advocate, so I'm on their side. I let them know when they come into my office. If they don't know, if it's on our first meeting, they know. Whatever they talk to me about is confidential. I will not disclose to anyone. And I give them examples. I'm not going to tell your mother. I'm not going to tell the principal. I won't tell your teacher. You can tell me that you hate your teacher, for example. That's the example that I like to use. And it doesn't go further than here. I'm going to ask you why. And I'm going to give you advice on how you can change that. You don't have to take my advice, but I just ask that when you come into my office, you remain respectful of me. The only time that I disclose is if you tell me something about harm. That's self-harm, harming someone else, or someone harming you. And I make sure that they understand what I mean. and then I give them the floor. And they open up, they talk to me. I have students that can't wait for me to come to tell me, Miss Bay, that's what they call me. Miss Bay, such and such, can I come to your office today? And I set them up and let them come talk to me. And I put them on a schedule. But when it comes to dealing with trauma, you need someone to be non-judgmental and an ear to listen. You don't always need advice. And sometimes I'm just there to listen to what's going on. And I will try to give them options on what they can do to solve their problems.
Okay.
So the second part was, can you repeat the second part of it?
You really did answer it. I said, how do you deal with trauma? And then you kind of equated it to, you deal with trauma because you are familiar with trauma and what you see and what's your outlet. So the outlet part.
I thought the outlet was like, what do I do to?
No.
I wanted to tell you that part. Okay, go.
You answer however you want to answer it. But I do kind of, I feel like you satisfied that question, honestly. I do want to ask you, what is the most challenging thing about being a school counselor?
So some of the things that you hold on to, I always have to make a decision on whether I disclose or keep it to myself. And if I keep it to myself, that means that it's on me now to support and help this child the best way that I can. So I look at what they come to me with and I have to decide, do I need to escalate this? Is it necessary to tell the principal? Is it necessary to reach out to the parents? Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's simple stuff that I've been through with my children, I've been through with family members I can relate to. Such and such doesn't like me. So, remember that lesson we did on bullying and how to get along with others and focusing on yourself? So I just related back to the stuff that we learned, because this is what I teach. I teach all social emotional learning. We talk about drugs, we talk about alcohol, we talk about relationships. And I teach from kindergarten to 8th grade students. My middle schoolers are the best ones. But the challenge comes in when I escalate a situation. My principals are great right now. I love both of them. I've had a principal that was the devil in the DOE. I'm not name dropping, but just let that be said. She was the devil. My principals are wonderful and understanding, but when it gets to the parents, sometimes, not always, when I'm the first line of connection, their first reaction is defense mode. And that's the most challenging part of the situation, of my experience, is getting through to the parents.
Let me ask you this, because that's interesting. When it comes to being a school counselor in relation to a teacher, it sounds like you have a level of discretion, which is great, right? You should have all the discretion in the world within your position. But you also teach. And I know with teachers, there's not a lot of discretion in what they can teach. They teach the lesson plan, well, most schools, I should say. They teach the lesson plan that they're required to teach. And sometimes they can be creative in how they teach it, but they have a lesson plan that is consistent with the lesson plan from the year before and all of that. Do you create your own classes, or are you kind of at the behest of the school to teach what they require you to teach, within the context of whatever it is that you're, teaching to your students?
Well, I have discretion. Like, I can talk about certain topics. When there's a school shooting, I'm briefed on it and they say, can you talk to the kids about this? Can you check in with them and make sure that it's okay? If there's any kind of crisis, we had a recent crisis at my school on Thursday. A teacher quit. We at the end of the school year. You couldn't wait till the end, whatever it was. So can you check in with the students? Can you talk about it? See how they're feeling emotionally, anything social, anything emotional, anything dealing with current stuff going on. I'll probably have to talk about whatever the latest shooting is over the weekend. I'm briefed and then I'm asked to speak to them. However, there is a curriculum and I love it because it's not so deep. It touches base. It's very easy for the younger kids to understand. It's parent approved. It's DOE approved. Like, it's Board of Education approved. and it's easy to follow, and it makes my life easy. And then I can ad lib real life experience. Like, you know, they touch base on obviously you don't want your 8th grade student learning how to deal drugs. They don't teach that. But they touch base on drugs and why it's bad for you. And another thing that's very popular right now with my middle school students is vaping. And we educate them on why it's bad. You know, you're just doing this to try to be popular or fit in, but the long-term effect is you're gonna harm your body. So we're teaching stuff like that, and I can add real world experience to it, but I just gauge it on where they're at. Some of them are fine with exactly what the book says. They get workbooks and everything like that. I show videos. I do my own videos once in a while, like with the class. It's not required, but it's something that I can do. But sometimes there's a requirement for me to go a little further with the student. Sometimes this is something that triggers why I might see a student one-on-one, because I noticed that in the class, they had a lot of questions. And let me pull this student out and talk to them and, you know, have a discussion. And maybe there's a need for me to make a phone call. Maybe there's something else. I'm like an investigator. I listen. I take the teacher's word for it most of the time, but I give the opportunity for the students to tell me their side. Then I put them together and I evaluate. I think of the student. Most of them I know already. They're repeat offenders all the time. The ones that come to my office, the ones that are habitual liars, the ones that always tell me the truth. So I have to open investigations on these students. But there's certain things that are triggered when I'm in the classroom with them in that setting, the group setting, that makes me do my one-on-ones. Okay. And sometimes I know I'm able to like stop a fight before it happens because it's something that I saw when I was in class. Or sometimes it's just the word of the teacher. You know, they'll see me in the hallway. Can you see the student today? Because such and such happened. And I think it's gonna escalate. And I'm able to cease it. I'll pull them together and then mediate the students. And some of them are very rough. They just feel how they feel and that's it. They're not always ready to talk. Right. That's something too. That's an issue.
Well, so everything you just said requires a ton of energy, right? And I know in our professions, we try our best to be as superhuman as possible, but we are human, right? And my question, kind of a two-parter, is what part of your job requires the most energy? And then how are you able to sleep? And the reason I kind of asked that together is because when you're admitting that much and you kind of tap into a little bit of all of it, you have the physical stressors, you have the mental stressors, you have the emotional stressors. That's a lot of energy that you have going out, and then you go home. And so, you know, how do you kind of, I know you say you don't take your work home, but that's a lot of stuff that you have going on during the week and you care. So that's a huge pull. So again, sorry, I asked the question again, what part of your job requires the most energy, and then how well are you able to sleep?
So to answer your question, and it's very simple, showing up every day. And I do meditation and yoga. That was a part of what I thought you wanted to know about how I deal or what's my outlet. But
I do want to. That's awesome.
Okay. So I have to sometimes just talk myself up to go every day, but I want to show up in a certain way. Whatever I have going on with me, I push it to the side. At 7:30, when I walk through that door, I'm walking through with a positive attitude and a smile on my face. I'm there to tackle the day. So making myself get there every day is the hardest part. When I check out at the end of the day between 2:45 and 3 o'clock, I leave it all there. I work my butt off in that course. Sometimes I don't answer my phone. I have group chats and stuff that I silence during the day because I can't. People have other things going on. They have freedom in their day to text and chat. I don't have that right now. My focus is within the confines of my school and my children that I advocate for. And when it's time for me to check out, and I don't get me wrong, I do extend myself. I have a phone number that they can contact me at in the case of emergency. But when my day is over, I leave it right there. And that's something that I had to learn over time, because I can't let it be all self-consuming. If we live to see another day, we come back tomorrow, we'll do it all again. I'll give it the same energy again. But that's the hardest part, just separating the two. And I've learned to separate my professional life from my personal life. And it's very hard, because sometimes I have stuff going on. I want to check in with my child. I want to make sure she's going for her driving lessons or whatever the case may be. I'm not able to do that properly, but then there's something called personal time.
Sure.
You know, if I have to, but I try to give it my all for the time period that I'm on duty.
What's your favorite part of the job, and what's your least favorite part of the job?
Hands down, it's paid summers off.
Okay.
That's my favorite thing. We're back in travel mode, so
right.
once you set up a gang of trips that I can't wait. Like, I'm traveling this summer.
Hopefully I'll see you too.
That is the hope. That's the plan. My least favorite part is, well, it's a thankless job. You stated that already. We know. But I want to say the challenging parents that want to go against you, even when they know that their child is not. None of us are perfect. Your child was wrong. And that's all we want you to do, is hold them accountable. And not get mad at the school for holding them accountable for not following the rules. So that's the worst part. When I have parents that just want to.
Right. So we'll stick on that. We'll stick to that topic, and I'll skip ahead. And imagine a parent's family, a child's parent criticize your services, criticize your work, criticize what you were doing. And I'm not saying that that's never happened, right? Because you may not have to imagine it. So what's your response to that? How do you handle a situation like that?
Okay, so here's the thing. I don't take it personally. I do a good job. I'm dedicated. I am a child advocate. I'm there for the children on behalf of them, in representation of them for what's good. And that's what I teach, and that's what I stand for. So the parent doesn't have to agree with me. It doesn't matter. They matter. I care for them too. And I have a lot of good relationships, but I have some that are just not good. And that's going to be everywhere. And everybody's not going to love you. So what matters most is to have a supportive principal, because at the end of the day, I don't answer to teachers. I don't answer. As a matter of fact, I don't even answer to the principal, but to have a good relationship with them, I'm an associate of the principal. It's important to have a supportive, good relationship with your school administrator. And I'm fortunate enough to say that I have that. So as long as I keep them in the loop, because I work with 2 principals, and let them know what's going on, I'm honest about my interactions with the parents, and they're normally supportive of me. And I also have an agency, so
right.
My job is unique.
Right. So I there's a couple things that you said that I'm just trying to digest real quick. And part of it is, it sounds like you have to have supportive leadership in order to, it helps to have supportive leadership to be successful. You can be successful without it, but it sounds like it's a lot, because you've mentioned several times, like, you've had kind of the Abbott Elementary type principals, and then you've had the more caring, compassionate principals who actually, support you. And so having that leadership in place is important. And I guess my question would be, I'm sure every parent isn't, always critical. Does it help, or how has it helped you when you hear supportive parents, supportive of like what you've helped them with their children?
That kind of falls in line of the best part of the job. Like that's what I'm here for. I want to make them happy. It's like a customer service kind of. I'm a customer service teacher, so to speak. So I want to support the kids and make the parents happy. If I can do that, then it's a good day. But that's just not always the case. In the real world, you know, some are going to be happy, excuse me, some are not.
Right.
But I can live with that. And I sleep easy. I'm telling you, I like, listen.
I love that. And I know, so for those of you who don't know, this is my aunt. So we even fitness wise, we kind of keep up with each other. So I can see when she completes her yoga workouts and all her runs and biking and everything, and she's on it all the time. So when she says that she actually utilizes kind of those as her outlets, I can attest that she does. And I guess the other part of it that I have a question for you is like, again, I've known you my whole life, and you've always been a caring person. I remember, you know, when I was young, when it came to being cool, like she kept me cool. Like I had a fresh pair of Nikes, whatever the newest pair was. She took me clothes shopping and made sure that I was looking fresh every single day before the next school year started. And it always kind of meant a lot to me. And I'm just wondering, like, you seem like from the time I've known you up until now in this position, that not much has changed about you. Do you feel the job has changed you at all?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for that. And you're more than a nephew. You're more like the little brother, but a grown little brother. I would say that there's been growth. The job has definitely humbled me. It's forced me to stand on my square, stand in who I am and what I believe in. And sometimes I'm humble, but sometimes you have to let people know what it is. And I do that. So.
Okay. What has been going on in your life recently that you didn't expect? Something that maybe it could be some of the things you brought up as far as like the school shootings or the.
I think so.
Okay, sorry.
So, again, I don't want to put everything on COVID because we're trying to get away from that, but definitely nobody could have. We knew something was going to happen in 2020 and things would change. Like growing up, you always heard of 2020, doomsday, the end of the world, all these different things. However, I could have never expected life to change for me like it did in 2020. I think the world went crazy, honestly. That's like the biggest thing. That's the most life-changing, and I've experienced a lot. I've experienced loss. I lost my mom. I've lost my grandmother to my grandparents, but people that I was very close to prior to, not COVID related, but I've experienced trauma, crisis, all kind of loss. But COVID affected me more than anything in this world, and being home. And I got an opportunity to work from home for a while, which was cool. I would love to work from home forever, but that's not a reality in my world, I think. But yeah, that's the most life-changing experience thus far. I never anticipated that things would be how they turned out after COVID.
Okay. You may have already answered this question because I feel like you have, but if you have more to bring, then let me know. But it's what has been on your mind recently about being a school counselor that you hope to share with listeners?
So as a school counselor, I would like for parents to just hear me say, check your children, especially middle school and up. If you're giving them the privilege of having a cell phone with internet access, it's your responsibility to monitor it. Monitor what they're doing, not on a monthly basis, like a weekly basis. And some of my students, whoever, family members that might hear this might get mad at me. Some of them are trustworthy, and that's facts, but monitor it. Don't trust them if they're trustworthy, if they don't give you a reason not to, but monitor their social media use, because there's a lot going on out there and they have so much access and they are so tech savvy, and I know it. I know what's going on. And I
So,
want all my parents to be aware and know what's going on.
okay. So I'm glad you said that. And I have a more of a question for you, and or more of a comment, and then you tell me if I'm kind of in line with the right train of thought. So one thing that I've noticed recently from having a high school age child is things seem to be balanced along the lines of the concerns and issues. And what I mean by that is, it used to be that the higher income schools would have a certain set of challenges and the lower income schools would have a certain set of challenges. And it seems like those challenges have balanced themselves out, where the higher income and lower income, like my child goes to we live in a higher income area, so she goes to a higher income school, but she has the same challenges that the lower income schools have, as far as maybe not as far as resources, but more in line with drugs. There's drugs in the school. There's fights in the school. There's nothing that really delineates the higher income schools from lower income schools outside of resources. And I'm wondering if that seems to be, you've worked in private school, and then you've also worked, I think you said, for BOE, I think that's how you said it. It's
public sector, private and public, yeah, and charter. And
that's not to indicate that the public sector is lower income, but I'm assuming there's probably a difference in resources. So I guess my question is, have you noticed that things have balanced themselves out, or do you see different challenges as far as the different schools' incomes?
So you hit the nail on the head again. At this stage of the game, yes, I currently work in the private sector. I've worked in the public sector. I've worked in charter. I've worked as a substitute teacher. Like, I've done it. I've been around the school system. I think I finally found my home, but I don't know, because I just want to put it out there. I'll be moving soon. We're planning to buy a house in North Carolina. I just want to say that. Okay. And that's like my next major focus. But anyway, to answer your question, public schools and private schools have to ask.
I don't know what that is.
Mind your business. That was Siri.
Oh, Siri, we don't need you right now. We're good.
In our business. That's nothing. Okay, sorry. Public schools and private schools, they have the same things going on. Like, aside from resources, and the thing that I was most surprised about in New York, basically, to answer your question, my surprise was public schools have a lot more resources right now than private schools.
Really?
And I'm like, these parents are paying out of their pocket. Why don't they have this and why don't they have that? When I was in public school, they had that in comparison. But the same things are going on. It's just on a different level. I don't know if there's a balance, but I saw the same things in public school that I see in private school. Some things are more prevalent. Some things in private school is just one or two students doing it. In public school, it's a host of them. But the public school environment houses way more students than private school. So the more students you have, the more likely that they're going to be exposed to, the more people, more children will be exposed than a smaller environment. So maybe it's only a couple, but there's fights, there's drugs, there's teenage pregnancy, all of that stuff is going on in both environments from my experience.
Wow.
So it's just, to answer your question,
the
level of it.
Okay. All right. So this is kind of one of my favorite questions to ask, even though I know it can be kind of sensitive sometimes, but maybe it doesn't have to be a sad story at all. But can you just give us like maybe 2 or 3 interesting stories from your time as a school counselor? No names, of course.
Okay, so one that I wanted to share is another social media story. We had to have a parent meeting, and now I'm dealing with fifth grade students, boys, another fight club. Apparently, the parent found out that her son was fighting in the bathroom. Okay. She wants to sue the school now because who's watching? Why are so many boys allowed in the bathroom? Why is my son being targeted? This particular school is a predominantly Black school, so to speak, and her son is not. He was, I want to say, Indian, I don't know, whatever. He's not considered Black or African American. All right, so I have to interview each student. I interviewed them together, about 5 or 6 boys, everybody who showed up in the video. And then I interviewed them individually. One common thing that I get, Ms. Bear, I ain't no snitch. I'm like, well, we ain't in the streets. This is not jail. I have to explain to these kids, like, you think you talking to me, like, say that for if you go to jail, which I hope you don't, but those are rules to know. This is a safe environment and you need to speak the truth if it's in you. All right, so interviewed all of them. When it gets down to it, I find out from the boy who was recording the video. I find out from the boy who was supposed to be the watcher. I find out whose phone it was. Why didn't he turn his phone in? I have to ask all these questions. Like, it's a whole investigation. So what you do or have done as a criminal investigator, I do in schools. I'm not interrogating the kids. I'm just trying to get to the truth. Right. So, long story short, in the parent meeting, after I gathered all my information and notes, I don't know if you asked me this question yet, but what's the worst part of my job? I have to take and keep notes because although I have a great memory, I write down everything that these students tell me. So, and that keeps me organized and I can always go back. Oh no, on such and such day, you said to me.
Right, like that,
So that part, and I keep notes. If I don't do it, sometimes it makes people uncomfortable to take notes while they're speaking. Sometimes it doesn't, but if I don't do it right there, I do it as soon as they walk out. Such and such said, before I forget, let me write it down. And then they wonder, like, how did she remember all of that? I wrote it down. You write stuff down, and I want me to show you, I will show them. I keep a paper trail. That's very important. Okay, so to bring it all in, I'm in an interview, a parent meeting with about 6 parents. One mother and father came. Mostly it's just the moms. A faculty person, the teacher who was in charge of the class at the time, and in this case, it was the priest. He's the head. He's like, because it's a private school, it's a Catholic school. He's in control too, so he's like equivalent to the principal. He was there as well, and the boys that were involved. One boy was instantly absolved, although he knew everything and he had a lot to add to the situation. He wasn't in the video. So I'm like, so you was the watcher? How did you manage to stay out of the video? Anyway, they're amazing. These kids, the stuff they know and they try to get over on. So it turns out that the parent who was accusing the other boys of bullying her son, her child actually organized this particular fight club. It was his phone that the recordings were taped on. He snuck his phone out of the safe box. There's a safe box that students are supposed to check their phone in every morning, and they get him back at the end of the school day. That's how it's supposed to be controlled. Some teachers had been lenient because they didn't think it was a reason. There's definitely a reason. So he sent it to, and I think you'll appreciate this story, a friend from his previous school. Now, the friend is watching the video. His father happens to be a police officer, and he contacts the principal, and this is how everything unfolds. Now, for whatever reason, mom didn't get the message.
Right.
Her son is the culprit. The organized thing. And the thing about this, the particular thing about this video, the boys were just like horse. You know, boys are gonna be boys. I don't discourage horseplay, fighting, but there's a time and a place for that. I don't discourage that. Boys fight, play fight. That's natural. I think that's a natural occurrence. I don't want no punks. I can't condone it in the school setting. It's not allowed. But the difference between that particular setting and the previous one that I mentioned, they were just playing around. They weren't trying to harm each other. They just
right.
What you got? What do you call it?
Slap boxing or something?
Yeah, that's what they were, slap boxing. Or so I guess at the point when one boy got the best of the other one, now it's bullying. But you organized this whole thing. So, in the meeting, and I try to be reserved. I have a little hood in me. Don't get it twisted, but I'm very professional in a work environment. And I give my parents respect. I give everybody respect, but I don't play with kids, number one. And I let them know that from the door. And I even told the kid, I was like, I will have I said son, but my son come up to the school and beat you up, okay? Do not play with me.
Right.
But anyway, I'm getting off track. I had to call out in the meeting. I'm like, excuse me, who is Matthew? And at that point, I needed the boy who I know told the truth to speak up in front of his parent, because she's thinking he wasn't even involved. He's the one who recorded the fight. The question in the story was, did they know it was going to be a fight? Yes, all the boys knew. They planned it. So there was no bullying. They agreed to do this.
Right.
So these are just some of the things that I deal with. And it's amazing. This mother came in wrong and strong.
Right. Loud wrong.
To school, and her son is being bullied. No, your son on the street.
Right.
Your son is the ringleader. Okay.
I can see that happening often, though, right? Because the first, as parents, we're like in protect mode for our kids, right? And I mean, I will tell you, I will admit, there's been a couple of times where I kind of like defended my child to the teacher, and the teacher just hit me with some receipts, and I was like, oh.
As you should, but so check in with the counselor. I don't know if your school counselor is as effective as I am. Some are not, but I get receipts. I get these kids talking. Now, if I don't know them that well, I'm honest, but I reach out to the parents first. She didn't want any parts of talking to me. She was suing the school, and so I'm bringing all my evidence to the meeting, right. And that's how I had to do it. And I shut her down. Like, right. I was just like, excuse me, wait a minute. Who is Matthew? I had my evidence. This is because, your auntie wears glasses now. I'm very proud of them, but they're only for reading. And I'm taking my notes. I'm like, who's Matthew? Excuse me, who's Matthew? And I look right at the boy who told me who Matthew was. Right. And then they started to spill. And the other students will go unnamed. I don't even know Matthew. I never saw him before.
Right. I got you. So, man, this has been amazing.
Fun on Sunday. I'm so happy.
So freaking much from you, like in just this 1 hour that we spoke, just a ton of information. So I just, and I know my camera's going crazy now, but we got a good hour in, and I just want to thank you for your time. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you for sharing your experiences. And I'm 100% positive that people who listen to this, one who want to get into school counseling, or they're just kind of in general wondering, what it's about, they took something from this. But I'm gonna give you one more question or one more opportunity to share something. If there was anything that you could share with the audience about becoming a school counselor, what would you share?
Thank you. I would just say, have a passion for it. If it's something that you want to do, by all means go for it. But just do it with a passion and go in with an open heart and an open mind.
Well said. Well said. I can't call you Natalie because you're still my aunt. So Aunt Natalie, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. Again, for the audience, primewellnesscoaching.com. You can find me there if you are in any of these categories: first responder, frontline worker, and you're just looking for some support or some coaching. I am available. So thank you so much. And
thank you so much for having me. And I want you to know I am super proud of what you do, super proud to call and have you as a nephew. And you can call me Natalie. We grown. Plus, I'm only 1 year older than you. So.
Right, that's true. All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right.
All right.
I hope to see you soon.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me. Actually, I hope that maybe you can get me back on here in the future for a segment on yoga and meditation.
I like that. We got to do that.
Yeah.
Yes, we got to do that. All right. All right. Well, all right. Thank you.
All right. Peace.